All right. We've got quite a few people in the webinar. And so let's get started. Hey everyone, my name's Parker, and I'm a commercial label partnerships lead at Spotify. And I'm excited to be hosting today's Spotify for Artists Masterclass. Take your fans further by building momentum into a tour. So today we're going to explore how artists and their teams can identify where fans are, build excitement around upcoming tour dates, and sustain engagement before, during, and after going on the road. We'll start with a quick look at some of the latest tools and insights available across Spotify for Artists, and then hear directly from a team that has successfully used those tools to build momentum into a tour. So, before we dig in, I'd love to welcome today's guest speaker, Kirsten Perkins, who is an editorial and marketing partnerships manager at Believe Music. She's here to represent an artist named Girly and discuss how her team has successfully used Spotify for Artists tools to support a major touring moment. Kirsten, do you want to say
Hi,
hi quickly?
everyone. I'm so excited to be speaking with everyone today. Thanks,
Awesome.
Parker.
Yeah, thanks. And we'll get back to you in a little bit. All right. So yeah, like I mentioned later, she's going to walk us through exactly how they approach planning, promotion, and fan engagement around Girly's tour, the Opinionated Tour. Cool. So one quick note, today's session is part two of Take Your Fans Further Masterclass series, which we launched this year to help artist teams think about how to move listeners deeper into fandom across key moments in an artist's life cycle. In our first session, we explored how release moments help deepen fandom. If you missed it, there's no worries. We're going to send out a link to watch that recording. So today we're focused on touring, another critical fan development moment, and how artists can use Spotify for Artists to connect with listeners, convert them into ticket buyers, and keep them engaged throughout a tour. So keep an eye on your inboxes for invites to our final session later this year. So let's dive in. One of the biggest advantages artists have today is that their fans are already spending time on Spotify every single day. And increasingly, we're seeing that the way fans listen can be a powerful signal for connecting them with live experiences. In fact, over half of concert ticket purchases via Spotify come from listeners who have been streaming that artist on Spotify program playlists. And when we look at an artist's most engaged fans, that signal gets even stronger. Super listeners make up just 2% of an artist's monthly listeners, but they drive over 18% of monthly streams. And when it comes to concerts, that same 2% of listeners account for 50% of on-platform ticket sales. So touring isn't just about announcing dates and hoping fans find them. It's about reaching fans where they already are listening and helping them take that next step from streaming your music to seeing you live. And that's exactly where Spotify can help. We've built a live events ecosystem designed to help artists connect fans with their shows at the moment they're already engaging with music. If you're playing concerts or festivals, you'll want Spotify listeners to know about them. And that's why we work with more than 30 ticketing partners around the world to bring concert discovery directly to music fans on Spotify. So as long as your shows are listed with one of those partners, your dates automatically become eligible to surface across Spotify. Fans can actively seek out concerts through services like Live Events Feed, Concerts Near You, Playlist, events pages, and artist profiles. Fans can also discover shows while listening by perusing through home, album pages, This Is playlists, artist videos, and the Now Playing view, and more. And across all these discovery services, Spotify is actively marketing your concerts directly to engaged fans. The goal across this ecosystem is simple. Help artists reach the right fans at the right time and make Spotify a destination not just for discovering music, but for discovering concerts too. And beyond helping fans discover shows, we're also continuing to invest in the broader live music ecosystem. So earlier this year, Spotify announced a year-long partnership with NIVA, the National Independent Venue Association, to support independent live music across the US. Through the partnership, we're helping fans discover more independent shows by increasing visibility for independent venues across Spotify and launching new editorial initiatives like the Independent Booker Spotlight playlist series. We're also continuing to invest in fan experiences through Spotify Reserved. Reserved helps connect artists with their most engaged listeners by reserving ticket access before the general public. Spotify identifies an artist's most dedicated fans based on signals like streams, shares, and engagement, then gives eligible premium subscribers a dedicated purchase window. So together, these investments reflect our broader commitment to helping artists not just reach listeners, but connect with fans in real life. And before you can build momentum into a tour, you need to understand where your fans actually are. Some recent updates to analytics and Spotify for Artists make this easier than ever. You can now view monthly active listeners by location, helping identify not just where listeners are, but where your most engaged fans are concentrated. Teams are increasingly using these insights to inform routing decisions, identify markets showing strong audience growth, and prioritize where to invest marketing dollars. You can also track how your monthly listeners, monthly active listeners, and super listeners evolve over time to better understand where demand may already be building. But understanding where your fans are is only one piece of the puzzle. Once you've identified those opportunities, you can manage and monitor your live events directly in Spotify for Artists. The Live Events tab within the Merch and Events section in Spotify for Artists gives artist teams a centralized view of all upcoming and past events listed on Spotify. There, you can see ticketing partner information, event details, and engagement signals like event views and saves all in one place. So, together with location analytics, these insights can help teams manage shows and better understand where demand is growing and how fans are engaging with their live experiences on Spotify. And once you've identified where your fans are and made your tour discoverable on Spotify, a next step is activating those listeners throughout the touring cycle. And so Campaign Kit gives you multiple ways to do that. And just an example, before a tour, you could use discovery mode, and that can help artists continue growing their artists and reach listeners who are most likely to engage with their music. If you're announcing a tour around the release of new music, Marquee can help grow your audience and reactivate listeners around that key release moment. And once you're on tour, Showcase's on tour header allows artists to highlight their tour directly with campaigns, helping them connect listeners with shows in markets where you're actively touring or looking to build momentum. And so teams aren't thinking about these tools individually. They're really using them together throughout the touring cycle to continually reactivate listeners, grow audiences, and deepen fan engagement. Finally, touring creates some of an artist's most compelling content opportunities, and we're making it easier than ever to bring those moments directly to fans on Spotify. So, with our recent beta launch of the Spotify for Artists video uploader, artist teams can now upload full-length videos directly through Spotify for Artists, including live performances, studio sessions, covers, and official music videos. Once uploaded, videos can be surfaced across Spotify experiences, including videos for you, today's top videos, the video tab, home, the now playing view, and fan notifications. And this is important because video has become such a powerful driver of engagement on Spotify. On average, after streaming a video, listeners stream that song 64% more often over the following 3 weeks. And they go on to stream the rest of an artist's catalog 57% more during that same period. For artists on tour, we recommend uploading content from the road, especially live performances. These moments help reach new listeners, deepen fan connections, and extend the energy of a tour long after the show ends. So, by bringing live performance videos directly to Spotify, artists have another way to engage fans right where they're already consuming music. And so, just to close us off, here are four things you can do to hype your next tour with Spotify for Artists. First, use analytics to plan your tour, check out your monthly active listeners by location. Two, manage your tour in Spotify for artists. Three, promote your music with Campaign Kit throughout that tour cycle. And four, bring fans closer with video. Awesome. So that was a lot of information. There's a lot of super exciting things going on at Spotify, all focused around supporting tours with the live events ecosystem, the tools that we're creating, and video especially. So those are some of the really current things that Spotify's working on. And so great. Now that we've walked through how Spotify for artists can help identify where your fans are, reach them, activate those listeners, um, the most valuable part of this isn't the tools themselves, but it's really how teams are putting them into practice. And so today we're joined by a team that has successfully used Spotify for Artists to support major touring moment. And they're going to walk us through how they approach planning, promotion, and fan engagement throughout a tour. So with that, I'd love to bring Kirsten Perkins from Believe Music. Hey,
Hi, Parker. Can you hear me?
how are you doing, Kirsten? Everything good?
I'm good. How are you?
Sorry, one second, having some audio issues. Can you say
Can you...
hello one more time?
Hello. Can
Hey,
you hear
yes.
me?
Okay, great.
Yes.
I can hear you. Awesome. Awesome. Sorry about that. Little technical difficulties on my end, but we worked through that. We're good. Awesome. How are you feeling today? What's going on?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Enjoying the World Cup that's going on right now. That's keeping me everlastingly entertained. I know England just got that big win over Mexico the other day, so congrats to all the England fans watching along today. U.S. lost last night, so that's a bummer, but it's okay.
Sorry.
Awesome. But we're here to talk about all the great things you've been working on with regards to touring, with regards to Gurley, who is an artist that you've been working with and is currently on tour. So to start, I'd be really interested in hearing about your role on the team, your role working with Gurley. Can you tell us a little bit about the tour and some of your goals going into that?
Yeah, of course. So, hi, for those who might have missed it. My name's Kirsten. I'm the editorial and marketing partnerships manager for Artist Services in Believe UK, which Girly is signed to. So, basically, my role is to work with our marketing and international teams to sort of inform the streaming strategy for Girly. So, I work quite closely with Girly and quite closely with Spotify to sort of ensure her campaign is rolled out well on platforms and also just to maximize audience growth with our digital teams,
Mhm.
etc.
Awesome. So you're handling all the important stuff, essentially. Awesome. And so for this tour, I was lucky enough to see her first tour, her first stop on the tour in Brooklyn at Baby's All Right. It was such an amazing show. I was joined by some of the folks on the Believe team, and we had an absolute blast. I'm worried if there's like any concert footage, they're gonna see me like crowd surfing or something along the tour. Um, but anyways, one of the things we talked about today was understanding where your fans are.
Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about how Spotify for artists and specifically the analytics helped shape Gurley's touring strategy? I think it's kind of cool that an artist from the UK starting in Brooklyn, that's like a super unique way of approaching a tour. So I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about how the analytics fed into validating demand for different markets. How did you approach all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that you got to see her in Brooklyn at the first show. That I'm very jealous to have not seen her in New York, but I've seen her in London many times, and I just absolutely love Girly. She's so good on stage.
Yeah.
But yeah, Spotify for Artist Analytics is was kind of a central point for informing that routing. And actually, I have to give credit to Girly herself. She is an artist that's very engaged with her own Spotify for Artist Analytics. She's constantly looking at data, and so she's really easy to work with from that perspective, in terms of like making informed decisions. And she was actually the person who identified quite early on that our international teams know that US is a massive market, so US tends to come at the top of a lot of artists Spotify analytics, but London was actually the top city and took up a large proportion of her actual audience. And then
Mhm.
it followed with sort of the American usual American cities and some American cities that we didn't expect. So for her, she identified quite early that okay, London is her home. It's where majority of her fans are. She can tour there anytime. It would be maybe a slightly unique approach to go to the US cities first and make sure that we cement those cities that already have an active growing fan base, especially as an independent artist, and then use those cities and the footage from those cities to build anticipation for the second leg of the tour, which is coming at the
Mhm.
end of this year, where she's going to be doing UK and Europe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's super. That makes a lot of sense. And one thing you mentioned that I picked up on was you said Gurley was the one who kind of got the idea to do that. And you mentioned she's in the data. How common is that with the artists that you work with for the artists themselves to like be in the data themselves? Is that unique to certain artists, or is it like, can you talk a little bit about that to me? That's super interesting.
Yeah, of course. I think it's quite a bit of a mix, but we work with independent artists. That's what we do at Believe. So I think we're often signing artists that already kind of are quite hands-on on their Spotify analytics,
Yeah.
and we're obviously developing artists. So we also have to work with them to make them understand the data, and our international teams are really, really good at that as well. Because yeah, I guess with that example, as I said, US is quite a big market. So it's often artists see that and they get really excited. And we're like, no, we have to concentrate in what is already an oversaturated market. And then we were able to help her understand that, Germany is also a top market for you.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at the Spotify analytics and where the German cities lie, and that became a key focus as well. But yeah,
Mhm.
I would say it's often a mix. I think working with independent artists for the past couple of years, we definitely see them being more hands-on. And I think that
Yeah.
is really important to make sure that you're working with them to actually understand the data, which our teams are really good at, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
that's amazing because it allows you to facilitate that conversation directly with the artist when you know both of you are, taking a look at what the trends are in the data. That's amazing. So moving on to the tour announcement specifically, because I think this is also an interesting piece. Gurley announced multiple tour legs around the release of her latest album, It's Just My Opinion, with the North American tour dates announced ahead of the album and the EU UK dates just before the release. So can you walk us through this new release specifically and how the team thought about the timing of the tour announcements as part of the broader album campaign? Were those two separate kind of moments that you thought about, or was it all part of like a cohesive strategy together?
It was definitely an intentional, cohesive strategy because one thing with Girly I'm not sure who is familiar with Girly and who isn't, who's like watching this webinar, but she has very, very specific branding. She's a queer,
Mhm.
pop alternative artist,
Yeah.
and she's very, very in touch with like her community. And with every album campaign, it's like we talk about it like it's a new era of Girly. She changed
Mhm.
up her hair and her branding and her look to kind of fit in with the new music. So therefore, we never ever treat anything with Girly as separate. Everything is
Right.
like in one cohesive thing. So whatever we're doing in Spotify is stuff that's taken from what she's doing on her own socials. It's not separate. So we
Yeah.
very intentionally aligned the tour announcements with the album release week. So the initial tour announcement happened on the actual Monday of release week. And then
Mhm.
we did tour pre-sale on the Wednesday of the release week. And actually, we saw a massive spike to her countdown page pre-saves on the following day, on the Thursday, just before the album release day, which
Yeah.
was really, really helpful. It was something insane, like 500% increase in
Wow.
pre-saves. Like yeah, the countdown page just went off
Yeah.
when we did the tour announcement, and then we launched the general sale of the tour on album release day. So it was like when you're going to stream Girly's music because you might have pre-saved the album already from the
Yeah.
countdown page and you get the notification, you'll immediately be seeing that there's a general sale for the tour. So
Yeah.
I think that tying in all those announcements together really through and putting them in key moments throughout album release week really
Yeah.
pushed both ticket sales and also like album sales, which was really,
Yeah.
really good.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. You said 500 What was the number?
It was like 500% increase in pre-saves. I don't know if
Wow,
my math is wrong, but
500%.
that's what
That's
my calculator
crazy.
got.
When you saw that number, 500% increase in pre-saves, was that number like did you expect that number because of all of the strategy around what you had built, or when you saw that you're like, wow, we weren't expecting that. That's great.
Yeah, I think a bit of both because, as I said, like Girly is one artist on our roster that when we always talk about her, we're like, she's perfect. She does everything. So good at like driving her fans to pre-save and things like that. And we know that there's like a key audience there that really, really love her.
Yeah.
However, it was like surprisingly nice to see the spike and
Yeah.
see that okay, we're making like very like our marketing team is making very specific decisions and
Yeah.
actually it's yielding immediate results. So that was like, yeah, that's
Yeah,
always
you're
nice.
reaching people, you're connecting with those fans, which is what this is all about. And a great way to build momentum, which is kind of a segue into my next set of questions to chat about. But when you're thinking about building momentum into the shows, I'm curious if you can speak a little bit about how Spotify for Artists played into that strategy specifically to some of the tools that we have available. Did you leverage any of those tools like Marquee or Showcase? Or we can talk about video now, we can talk about video later, but I'm curious how you're thinking about all those different tools that we have available for the artist community and being able to leverage that into building momentum leading into shows, elongating the excitement during them. Can you chat a little bit about like the thought process you had for this?
Yeah, 100%. I would say that Marquee and Showcase definitely played a very central role in the overall Girly campaign because, as I said, she has a core audience, and a lot of the time we are trying to re-engage. We have to re-engage them, especially because Girly is Curly kind of blew up 5 years ago from a track called More Than a Friend, and a
Hmm.
couple of other catalog tracks. So when there's new music, we do have to remind them, hey, there's new music. And Marquee and Showcase have been quite
Yeah.
vital in that. And we do see quite good engagement from new listeners into like converting into actual fans and like
Yeah.
long-term streaming. And another thing that you also mentioned earlier is discovery mode. Again,
Hmm.
because she has those really good catalog tracks, um, sometimes we enter those, well, our algorithms enter those tracks into discovery mode,
Hmm.
and then we see that kind of having a beneficial effect on her catalog overall. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we honestly use every part of Spotify for artists and
Hmm.
for the campaign. Like we did. We also thought of like fun ways that we can engage with it. Like when we were announcing this tour and were announcing this new album, we refreshed all of her Spotify canvases
Hmm.
to
Okay.
yeah, like even the old catalog tracks
Yeah.
to this new announcement and this new era of girly, so that when now we're doing spend on Showcase and fans are like re-engaging, it's bringing them into something that's like new and exciting and interesting, and then that kind of builds, not to end roll credits, but builds momentum around the tour.
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah.
end roll credits all day. It's okay. No, that's awesome seeing how like you really it's the priority and the focus should really be about finding ways to find a through line through all the different tools that are available. There's not really a silver bullet here. You really have to be thinking holistically across the pre-release phase, announcing the tour. How does that interplay with the album? What are the tools available to make sure that your audience on platform sees those notifications, pre-saves the countdown page, streams the
Exactly.
release when it's out? Like you want all of that to be working together.
Exactly. And I think different things do work for different artists. But I always, and my team as well, we always try to think of ourselves as a consumer. If you have to click through loads of things to
Yeah.
get to the thing that you want, you lose fans at some point. But if you're landing on, and another thing that we did actually is within Girlie's smart links for her tour announcement, all the Spotify links were actually leading back to the countdown page
Mm.
specifically.
Yeah.
So if you're on the tour announcement, you're going to be immediately led back to her album. If you're on her album page, you're going to be immediately led back to the tour. Like
Yeah.
it was all one thing. But again, because Girly has such a well-branded like universe,
Yeah.
um, that's kind of how we thought holistically about things. But yeah, you're right. Different things work for different artists. It was easier
Yeah.
with a girly type artist to think about everything on platform to fit
Right.
into her world, if that makes it. I had like a almost like a Bible to work from, but yeah.
I need to see this Bible. I need to take a look at it. I'm sure a lot of people on the call would love to take a look at that too, because it sounds like it really worked really well.
Yeah, go to her Spotify page. Listen to
There we
that.
go. Shout out. Shout out. Awesome. Cool. So another thing I'm thinking about and that Spotify's thinking about is video. Um,
Yes.
and so now that we have this S for A, Spotify for Artists video upload feature that we're starting to roll out, I'm curious if your team has been thinking about capturing tour content, capturing those live performances, and kind of feeding the fans who might not be able to get to a show. Can you talk a little bit about how you're thinking about leveraging video to, extend the momentum of a tour or even just keep fans more engaged between shows? Curious how you're thinking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, as I said, I feel like I'm just like my artist is so perfect, but it's true. I really just do love
I
working
hope
with
she's
girly.
tuned in right now.
I know. Yeah, but she's really good at like content. Content is her
Yeah.
strong suit. That's how
Hmm.
she's able to always draw fans in. I mean, around the charts and like album release week, she was doing lots and lots of videos, like getting her fans to,
Yeah.
buy the music, etc., etc., stream the music.
Yeah.
But with the tour specifically, we have she has a really strong social media manager, so we were able to capture loads of content in bulk.
Yeah.
And rolling out sort of tour content is always something that is a part of our strategy because it does. We know that on social media, other social media platforms, it performs well. So we have already actually started uploading sort of the live performances
Yeah.
to her page for the US tour again because
Hmm.
she identified and we identified that we wanted to build anticipation for the UK tour. There's a big gap between the US tour and the UK tour and
Uh-huh.
Europe tour on purpose. So
Right.
now we've started filling this time with sort of video content of the
Hmm.
live performances to try and drive hype and get people in her European cities to start
Yeah.
streaming ahead of the tour and things of that nature. So yeah, we've already kind of started doing that and kind of testing out things. So we'll
Hmm.
have to see over the next few months what does well
Yeah.
and what doesn't. But I think we're quite excited because, as I said, she does have a highly engaged fan base. So I think we'll be able to pick up some good data and see what works and what doesn't work. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Um, another thing I'm thinking about going back to something we were talking about earlier in terms of planning the tour.
Mhm.
I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about like routing decisions. You kind of already talked about, starting in the US and then moving to the UK and Europe, but I'm curious once you're in Europe, were you using, monthly listeners, monthly active listeners, looking at that breakdown by location to help inform certain routing decisions within once you're in Europe, once you're in the UK, how did that inform like the destination path that you were going to have Gurley and the team go on for the tour? And were there any markets that really like stood out to you and surprised you?
Yeah, 100%. Definitely. I think, as I said before, with an independent artist, number one, touring is really important. It's like one of the top pieces of leverage that we have in
Yeah.
order to gain fans. But also we have to be a lot more strategic about where we're placing those artists. So
Hmm.
looking at her top cities in Spotify for artists is like a massive part of that. We need
Yeah.
to specifically look not just at the territory breakdown, but at the city breakdown and
Hmm.
see, yeah, as you said, how many active listeners there are in each territory. What's that relative to the country size? Does that mean that she has a concentrated audience there? So we were 100% doing that with Girly, and that kind of informed the routing for her tour. But then on top of that, yeah, as I said, Germany was her third top country. But what was really interesting is that like Bonn in Germany was like
Hmm.
in her top 10 cities, and
Wow.
that kind of indicates to us how much she does matter in Germany, that she's
Yeah.
going outside like the common cities, like that Bonn was beating some UK cities for her,
Wow.
which like yeah stood out for us and meant that our international marketing manager specifically was like, okay, we really need to make a concerted German effort ahead of
Mhm.
the European leg and make sure that we're doing things on Spotify to cater to that audience specifically.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. That's super cool hearing about, a surprise market that showed up in the data that helped inform some of the touring decisions. Um, let's see. So, kind of reflecting, looking back, um, is there anything that really stood out from a tool perspective, an insight perspective, that really had the biggest impact on kind of the success of the tour so far?
Yeah, I would say that within Spotify for Artists, as I said, I think the countdown page was a really, guys, believe when Spotify says that countdown pages drive pre-saves to active listeners of the album, because I think we definitely saw that in
Yeah.
Girlie's Days. And I think all the fun things that we were doing around, as I said, the canvases and
Hmm.
videos around the countdown page was did really drive listeners on release, and
Yeah.
as I said, it was all timed with certain sales and tour announcements. And I think that really, yeah, kind of converted fans into
Yeah.
actually buying tickets because they were seeing active content on her Spotify. So yeah, that's probably our number one tool.
Yeah. I love hearing that. I think Countdown Pages is one of the coolest features that we've been able to roll out on Spotify and have seen it perform like really wonderfully for lots of artists at all different stages of their career.
Yeah, 100%.
Um, yeah. Another thing I'm thinking about is, once the tour is kind of locked, um, can you talk a bit about how Spotify is like connecting, making sure fans are aware of the tours and the different locations on Spotify? We have a lot of different features. We have this live music ecosystem that we talked about earlier in the presentation, where there's a bunch of different destinations on Spotify where listeners can go and see touring locations. It shows up in the Now Playing view. We have playlists for this. It's on the artist profile. I'm curious from your point, I'm going off script a little bit, but is there anything Spotify can do to better bring visibility when an artist is on tour and their specific destinations or locations? Like what can Spotify do more of to like make sure that fans are aware when the artist is out that they should be looking into tickets and showing up to these shows?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think with the new live performances, I don't know, this is just me also as a consumer. It might be interesting to get like a notification about the fact that, oh, your artist has actually posted a live performance, because
Hmm. Mm,
also like we're all in the industry, so we all know about these new features,
yeah.
but fans sometimes take a bit longer to notice new features. And actually, I think I would be super I like most other people love to see their favorite artists live, and especially as I said with Girlie, she is someone who really shines on the stage. So if I got a
Hmm.
notification saying, "Oh, there's a live performance from Girly," I think that would immediately make me click on, oh, what's this live performance? What city is she in? And maybe there's like a tag of what city they're in, so that you
Yeah.
can see where she's already been performing, and then obviously after that you'll get curious and want to see where her upcoming tours are. But yeah, I think for us anyway, how we kind of like shaped her touring on Spotify, as I said, is like every component that was available to us kind of mentioned the tour. So the
Yeah.
artist pick, for example, was like
Right.
tickets on sale now and things like that. Just small things, but you want to make sure you don't always know where fans are looking. And
Yeah.
especially I think with like yeah, an artist where you are trying to grow their audience internationally, it's best just to make sure that the information is as accessible and everywhere as possible. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I
yeah.
hope I hope the Spotify product team's on the call because that was some really good feedback there on what we can do. But hopefully, we're doing a pretty good job already with making sure fans are aware. But I love that. I love that feedback. Awesome. Cool. Well, I think we have time for some Q&A. So let's move ahead to that section. Um, and so let's see, where do I find the questions that have come in? Ah, right here. Love it. Okay. So this first question, how does Spotify actually notify fans about upcoming shows and what do artists need to do to take advantage of those channels? So I can take this one. So like we mentioned, there's already a lot that we're doing here on Spotify, and there's actually very little that artists need to do beyond making sure that those live events are properly listed with one of Spotify's supporting ticketing partners. So it's making sure that that box has been checked. And so once that's done, your shows should show up directly on Spotify. They automatically become eligible to appear across that live ecosystem, that live events ecosystem that I mentioned, artist profiles, concerts near you, and even more like contextual moments like home and then now playing you. Um, and so beyond those experiences, Spotify also helps market your shows to eligible fans through things like personalized emails, push notifications, home banners, throughout the tour life cycle. So I think the biggest takeaway for the individual or the individuals that are interested in this one is make sure your events are listed with those ticketing partners because that's what Spotify uses to pull that information in so it does show up on the artist profile. Make sure you're keeping that stuff up to date. And then Spotify kind of has that magic to, help connect those shows with those fans who are engaging with your music. So that's kind of how I would answer that question. Cool. All right. So how do you determine when a market is ready for a tour stop? Kirsten, do you want to take this one?
I'll take it. Yeah, I think it's different for every single artist. I think when you have artists where their markets are still developing, I mean, with Girly specifically, we knew that a market was tour ready based on everything that we'd kind of done pre tour cycle. So
Mhm.
were we doing things in markets? So for example, we knew that we could tour Brooklyn because Girly had already gone to New York and done loads of activations and done sort of like she did like a rage room in New
Right.
York. And then like she'd done previous shows there before. And so we knew that should probably be we paid a lot of attention to New York. We're also seeing the numbers grow in New York. It's having very specific effects. So
Mhm.
we know that we're gonna tour there and that couldn't
Yeah.
easily kick off the tour. But equally, a lot of independent artists don't have the funds to travel abroad,
Yeah.
but there's ways that you can also lean in to those markets pre-tour and lean into those trends. I think like fans just really want to feel connected to their artists and want
Mhm.
to feel like their artists understands them in a weird
Right.
maybe parasocial way. But I think Girly is really good at, yeah, as I said, just knowing her fan base and like knowing her fan base in individual markets. So she
Mhm.
might lean into a trend that's maybe happening in Germany
Right.
on her socials. And then, we might see a spike in German listens and things like that and other markets as well. So yeah, I think it's there's not a one size fits all answer, but I think if you know that you've been doing some activity in the market that
Mhm.
and you're seeing some sort of increase in that market, then you kind of know that a market is ready for a tour
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah, it's
But
kind of like a like that call and response idea,
exactly.
you've executed something previously in that market and you're seeing, the fans respond to that in a way that gives you that signal like, hey, let's activate here. Let's execute here.
Yeah. And but
Awesome.
you should be doing that based on the numbers that you're already seeing. So it's like
Right.
numbers inform decisions, but you can't just solely rely on the numbers if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Has to be some intuition there too. Awesome. Cool. So let's go to the final question, I believe. Okay. All right. For an artist planning their first tour, what Spotify signals should they look at to help inform that strategy? I think we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but Kristen, if you want to go ahead first, and I can kind of layer in some additional context too.
Yeah, 100%. I think if you're planning a tour, I mean, you should obviously look at your top cities. Like your top cities are going to inform
Yeah.
everything. But then again, it's about like actually understanding the data and seeing what the streaming behavior in those cities are. Like
Yeah.
are they like now that we have Spotify's new ability to see like monthly active listeners,
Right.
I am and myself and the team are definitely going to be paying close attention to what percentage of active listeners there are in a city versus what percentage of like passive listeners there are. And
Yeah.
do you know what? Sometimes if there are passive listeners, more passive listeners in a city, that just might mean that you might need to go into that city and do a bit more work.
Right.
So I think it's so going to be dependent on the artist and the sort of like scene in that city. But there's definitely like pretty like decent metrics in Spotify that can help you kind of inform your strategy a little bit. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's just from my thinking of Girly.
Yeah, for sure. I think the idea of monthly listeners, which I think that's like the traditional metric that everyone kind of has used and is familiar with. The monthly active listeners is kind of a new metric that I think Spotify introduced maybe this year or late last year. But I think understanding the differences between those two metrics and kind of like looking at the percentages, how the percentages break down across those different cities is a super smart way because it definitely informs the listening behavior of those fans in those markets. Because active is like lean forward. These fans are leaned in. They're listening from an artist page. They're saving. They're doing all those like high intent things, and that's great. If you have markets that are more, less percentage of active listening, that's also good. That means there's something's going on. People are kind of listening to this. They're discovering the artist on their own, but haven't yet made that next step to like making that active step to go save the album, listen directly from the artist page, listen directly from the album page. So I think playing around with those metrics and can really be a powerful way at unlocking an understanding of, where the right places to go. So super cool, super exciting stuff that Spotify is really focused on to allow teams like your team and teams across the world to really, dive into and help support their artists. Um, so I think that is it for today's masterclass. Hope this was valuable for everyone tuning in. I think we had a great crew today. I'm so happy that everyone tuned in from all over the world to check this out, hear from myself, hear from Kirsten, hear all the things that we're working on, and the amazing work that the Believe team has been doing to support Girly on her tour. Check it out if you can. Check out the album if you can. But this has been great chatting with everyone, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you.